Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today we are back to work on Project Chaos Theory and we're finally going to install our tunnel mounted UMI torque arm and cross member for our Turbo 350 transmission. So I've just kind of laid everything out here to show you guys what we're dealing with. And I'm going to kind of go over it, show you what all it comes with, and kind of explain why I decided to go this route. So obviously you've got the torque arm, but you're going to notice something a little different when we get to this end. It does not have a mount to the back of the transmission. This is very important. It's actually a key feature and a reason I went this way. And over here we have our new transmission cross member. Now, other than the fact that it's built way more heavy duty, what kind of makes this different from the factory torque arm is the fact that this torque arm does not mount to the tail shaft of the transmission. So here's the deal with that, guys. Once you start getting into, bigger power levels in these 3rd gen and even the 4th gen Camaros, you start running into an issue where, number one, the factory torque arm, which is just a stamped steel unit, it can flex on you. And number two, since it's bolted directly to the back of the transmission, the tail housing on the transmission there, what can happen is when you hook all that power, you can actually crack or completely rip the tail housing off the transmission, which kind of sucks. I personally have cracked several of them in the past on 3rd gen Camaros. So what this does is it moves the mount for the torque arm from the tail shaft of the transmission and actually moves it here to the cross member for the transmission. That's why it's called a tunnel mounted setup, because it's no longer attached to the back of the transmission. It's attached now to the transmission cross member, which is attached to the tunnel. You get all the hardware you need to do it. You got your instructions. They even give you some lube for the poly bushings. These bushings can also be lubed with a grease gun. You see the Zerk fittings here and here. And this particular torque arm is also adjustable, so you can adjust the pinion angle of your rear end by adjusting this link right here. Now, right off the bat, I want to say this thing is really heavy, guys. I mean, it's obviously a lot more heavy than the factory piece, and it's that way by design, so it doesn't flex. It can keep your rear end solid, kind of help with the wheel hop, things like that. Once we get the old torque arm off, I will actually weigh the new torque arm and cross member against the old torque arm and cross member and see just how much weight we're putting on. I know when you're building a race car, you worry about things like weight. You don't really want to tack weight on, but this is a situation where you're putting the weight on at the center mass of the car, back towards the rear end of the car, where the weight's actually going to help you a little. And also, if you're putting on weight to strengthen your chassis, sometimes that's just a sacrifice that has to be made. But this definitely looks like a quality unit here, guys. I mean, everything is just super solid and heavy duty. I'm not going to go over it too much. I want to get this thing installed tonight, show you guys how to install it. So that's what I'm going to do. In addition to all the hardware, it also came with pretty much an entire sponsorship sticker pack. But like I said from the beginning, guys, nobody's decals are going on this vehicle unless they are sponsors, and UMI currently is not. But if you're watching UMI, help a brother out. I'll throw these bitches all over this car. Also want to note, if you want one of these for yourself, I will put a link to this product in the video description. This is sold as a package, guys. You get the torque arm and the cross member and everything. Package deal. Yeah, so let's get started. Obviously, the first thing you're going to want to do is make sure you get the vehicle off the ground high enough for you to work. Now, this is very important, guys. I'm on ramps in the front, but I'm on jack stands in the back. And you'll notice the jack stands are not under the rear axle. I have the jack stands here on the factory jacking points under the car. You want the rear axle to be able to move freely to help you with alignment while you're trying to hook the new torque arm up. So if you've got your jack stands under the axle, it's going to put it in a bind, and when you go to uninstall the old torque arm and reinstall the new torque arm, you want to be able to manipulate the axle up and down and manipulate the pinion angle. You can't do that if the axle's on jack stand. So now honestly guys, this is not a terribly complicated procedure, so I'm going to go ahead and get under the car and get started. As I've already said, you do not want to have the vehicle jacked up by the rear end. As you can see, I've already got my jack under here so that I can raise or lower the rear end to manipulate the, you know, where this torque arm is going to bolt up. So here's our old torque arm. What you're going to want to do is get you a 21 millimeter wrench. I do not have one, so I'm using an adjustable wrench to hold the bolt on top, and a 21 millimeter socket on the bottom here, and just loosen both of these up and pull them out. Now with that done, I'm just going to take a pry bar, pop this out, falls right off. Once that's loose, you should be able to just take the torque arm and work it back and forth, pulling it towards the rear of the car. Comes right out. You may notice I've already pulled the drive shaft. The drive shaft will be there for you guys, but it really won't be in your way. It's just on the inside, just inboard of the torque arm. Ours is out because we're in the process of doing an LS swap on this. So now moving up here to the tail of the transmission, you can see the torque arm mount. That's what we just pulled the torque arm out of. And right up here above it, you have a 15 millimeter bolt and nut. You need to take that loose. And then over on the passenger side, you have two 15 millimeter nuts you're going to have to take off. Now I actually forgot to mention, I don't have any exhaust on this car. But if you did, this is actually an exhaust hanger right here. So you're going to have to reuse this. You would have had to unbolt your exhaust from this hanger. Like I said, I don't have an exhaust on this car anymore. I'm getting rid of that hanger, but keep that in mind. I'm going to go ahead at this point and I can pull this bolt out, but my top bolt up here, it won't go all the way out. It's going to hit the tunnel. And this guy, same story. So what we're going to have to do at this point is move on to removing our old cross member so we can droop the transmission down just a little bit and get these remaining bolts out to get our torque arm mount off. Now, very important, if you have exhaust, which 99% of you do have, once this is out of the way, you're going to want to bolt your bracket back on with these two lower bolts down here so you still have your bracket to hold your exhaust up. Okay, so now that the jack is supporting the weight of the transmission, I'm going to take my transmission mount bolt out right here in the center. And that's a 15 millimeter, just like everything else so far. Then I'm going to take my 4 bolts out that are holding the cross member in. And I want you to note, guys, while I'm doing this, there are only 2 bolts in each side. We'll go over that here in just a minute. Old cross members out. Now that that's done, what we're going to do is we're going to lower our jack down just a little bit and let the back of the transmission droop. Now if you've removed your drive shaft, which you probably should have for this, if you don't have a plug in the tail shaft like I do, fair warning, you probably will get an oil bath. So you don't want to be back here when this comes down. So Let it down real slow. You don't want to let it down a whole lot. Keep in mind, there are things in the engine bay that could hit the firewall. Looks like I've got to come down a little bit more. I want it out of there, even though it doesn't matter so much to me because we're going to be pulling all this out anyway. So the part you see me going through right now, guys, that's just for you and the camera. But you can see I got it down enough now where I was able to slide that out. And I can slide this one out. And what I would then do is either put one or take the top bolt back out and put it in down here and reattach my exhaust hanger there. I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to jack this puppy back up. We're going to do a quick weight comparison on the old and the new, and then I'm going to come under here and show you how to install it. Hey guys, so here's the moment of truth. I weighed the old torque arm along with the old cross member and torque arm mount, and the weight for all three components was 19.4 pounds. Then I weighed the new UMI torque arm and cross member with mount and everything, and the total weight for the UMI stuff was 31.1 pounds. So we were actually adding on 14.7 pounds. But I want to show them to you side by side and show you where that added weight is and why I'm not worried about it and how much it should strengthen this car. So we're just going to start with the cross member, guys. So here is your factory cross member, just stamped steel. You can see not a whole lot there. Once we really start throwing some power to this thing, this guy's probably going to flex. It's going to be pretty flimsy. And again, remember what I said about the only having 2 bolt holes thing. Now, when you compare that to the UMI, it is actually boxed steel. And again, we have the torque arm mount, which is located on the cross member now. And it actually has 3 holes. Now, because this vehicle was available with 2 different transmissions, there's already another set of holes under there that already have thread certs in them. So we're going to be able to utilize 6 mounting points with our cross member instead of just 2. Now here's where it gets real good, guys. When you compare the UMI torque arm to the factory stamped torque arm, there's just absolutely no comparison. You got these big beefy flanges here compared to your thin steel stamped flanges. You've got this thin steel body here and then the slip-in torque arm mount. And over here you just got this thick tubular steel body, you know, with your heavy-duty polyurethane torque arm mount here. I mean, there's just no comparison, guys. Plus, add in the ability to adjust your pinion angle, which will come in real handy, you know, if you want to lower your car or something like that. You can make sure everything's straight. So we're now back under the vehicle with our UMI cross member. Now, the cross member did come with new hardware, which is actually a 17 millimeter 10.9 rated bolt now. But I was wrong about something, guys. These extra holes here, while they do have inserts in them to be tapped, they're actually not tapped. Now, for the purpose of saving time in this video, here's how I'm going to handle that. I'm going to install this cross member with just the 4 bolts for now. And when we do this swap, like I said, guys, I'm just doing it, like, I don't even really need to put this back in right now because I'm going to have to drop it off camera again when we pull this engine and transmission. But just for you guys, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to bolt all this back together. I'm going to put this on. I'm going to use these 2 holes, but when we go to do our swap, before we put the LS and the Turbo 350 in, I'm going to come under here with a tap, and I'm going to tap this 3rd hole on each side, and you know, that way I can have 3 holes in there. It'll just be a lot more solid. But for now, let's get this show on the road. So we're just going to set our cross member up just like so, and it appears I'm hitting the transmission here. Now keep in mind, guys, my cross member is not designed for this turbo, or for this 700R4. My cross member is designed for a turbo 350. So I don't know how far we're going to get here. I actually do not think I can jack up the transmission anymore, but it looks like we might be able to do this just enough to show you guys what's going on. What it is the mount that would work for a turbo 350 or a Power Glide or a T5 transmission. It's actually hitting on the pan on the 700R4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this in and just do the best I can just to show you guys how this goes together. Because like I said, I'm going to be pulling it right back out probably later this week. We're going to be pulling this drivetrain out anyway, so. And there we go, guys. I was able to get it in just enough to show you what's going on. The transmission pan is resting on here. So if you're not doing a swap like I am, you would have gotten the one for the 700R4. It would have actually set back a little further, and this tail shaft would be down here. And after you got the cross member bolted in, you would just drop your transmission back down. The bolt would go right through your mount here, and you would be able to just simply run your nut back up on your mount bolt and you'd be finished. We can't do that because, again, this is for a turbo 350 slash T5 slash Power Glide. So we're just going to leave the transmission setting up like that. We're going to move to the back of the vehicle and start installing the torque arm. So here's the deal with our torque arm, guys. We're going to start at the back, and we are going to attempt to slide the torque arm into place. Got to kind of wiggle it just a little bit. And I'm not sure whether we're supposed to use the inside or outside holes. I believe we're supposed to use the innermost holes, but we'll figure that out in a minute. What I might have to do is just see how close it's sitting to where the drive shaft should be. But it says to work it in from the front. It is a tight fit. So we're just going to keep wiggling it. As you guys saw, it took some persuasion, but I was able to get this guy back where it needed to be. Now, as far as the bolts, UMI recommends using their longer bolt kit. I do not have that. What they say is if you reuse the factory bolts, they're actually too short to use the washers. So they recommend using their bolt kit. I'll try to remember to put the part number in on the screen right here, but I don't have those. I may get those before we get this swap done. For now, they recommend using the factory bolts with no washers. So they have to be dropped in from the top. You do not want to put these in from the bottom. Let's get these in here. Yeah, and you can see there's not a lot of thread left here, just enough for our nuts to go on. So you want to put these in from the top. You don't want to put them in from the bottom, because if you put them in from the bottom and something was to happen, the nut was to vibrate off of them, they would just fall out and the torque arm would be loose. So you don't want that happening. So we'll put them in from the top, tighten them up. We're just going to put these kind of finger tight right now. We're leaving everything loose so we can move things around. But I'm now going to go to the front of the vehicle and we're going to deal with the new torque arm mount up there. We are back up here in the front where we belong. Now, the procedure for this is before you install this front bushing, you want to use one of these included packs of polyurethane grease. And what you're going to want to do is use that to grease all the contact areas of this polyurethane. You know, grease the outside of it here and here. And I would go ahead and even put some on these bolts before you run them through. Once again, guys, I'm just doing this temporary for you guys. I've got to take all this back apart. So I'm not going to waste the grease right now. I will use the grease when we go to put the new engine in. So for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to install it greaseless. We're going to run our bolts in from the passenger side. And you've got two adjustments here on the torque arm mount, or on the torque arm side. Using the closer adjustment allows for less movement. If this is just primarily a street car, guys, I would use the top one, you know, to allow for more movement. Ultimately, I'm going to have it on the bottom one. For now, again, temporary install. I'm just going to put it in whichever one goes in the easiest. So we're going to run that in. Put our nut on here. I'm going to flip one up. I was able to go ahead and put it on the short one, which is the one I wanted it on. So that's pretty cool. Now, I don't have my drive shaft in, and even if I did, you wouldn't really be able to tell because, you know, I've got the transmission pushed up right now. But they say you want this torque arm to run parallel to your drive shaft. So, you know, if you have to make adjustments at the front or the back, that's what you need to do. Now, you're also going to want to pump some grease into these fittings. I would just give it, you know, 2 or 3 pumps. That should be all it needs, just enough to keep it from squeaking. But now that this is done, what we would do at this point, if we were doing a permanent install, we would go ahead and torque these guys down. I have no idea of the torque specs. I'm going to say about 3 ugga-duggas. But you go ahead and snug these guys up. Then you're going to want to come back here, and UMI says to torque these 2 nut and bolt set, and I believe those are lock, or those are nylock nuts. But UMI says to torque these to 40 to 50 foot-pounds, no more than 50. Once again, I'm not going to do that at this particular time because I've got to take all this right back apart after this video. But just for reference, these are 19 millimeter, and again, these guys up here are 17. After you do that, you want to come back here and super ugga-dugga torque these 2 guys here. Again, I don't know the exact torque, but I would say no more than 75, 80 foot-pounds should be sufficient. And I'm going ahead and tightening these up because this part I will not have to take loose again. All good. Now here's the last part, guys. This right here is what you use to set pinion angle. Now, UMI says in their instructions that they have these preset to 0 degrees before they ship them out, and that is on a stock factory height car. Now, in order to do this, what you're going to have to do is take this car back off the jack stands back here, and you're actually going to need to move the jack stands under the axle because you want the car sitting under its own weight, and you want it to be level when you set your pinion angle. I'm not going to go over that. They have full instructions on how to do that with this torque arm, and they have different recommendations that they suggest for either a stick shift or a automatic car, etc. All you're going to need is like a $10 angle gauge. And if you've never seen one, this is what it looks like. You're just going to set it here. You're going to, well, like I said, the instructions are in there, guys. I can't do it right now because I don't want to take the car off jack stands because, you know, hopefully in the next day or two, I'm going to be yanking everything out. That's going to hinder what I'm doing. So Refer to the instructions that UMI sends you. You should be good. Once all that's done, you're going to torque these guys down to 50 foot-pounds as well. Just make sure that your drive shaft isn't going to hit the torque arm anywhere. And it's close, guys. I mean, it comes real close. You are going to use, as I was talking about earlier, you're going to use the inner bolt holes here. There's no possible way you could use these 2 outer bolt holes. It would shove the torque arm right into your drive shaft. But yeah, guys, I'm pretty happy with this. Nice and beefy. This ought to do exactly what I need it to do. And as you can see, you know, this thing was no problem whatsoever. If you crawl under here and you're not doing it on camera, this is probably an hour job. I've literally been out here for an hour and a half, and that's with showing you guys, you know, how to do this. So I would say if you just buckle down and did it, you know all the tool sizes you're going to need now. I just told you. You ought to be able to knock this out in an hour to an hour and a half, no problem. And keep in mind, I'm on jack stand, so if you do know somebody with a lift, that's going to make it even easier. So that's it, guys. That's our UMI tunnel mount torque arm install. Like you just saw, it's pretty easy peasy. I did have to hammer on it just a little bit to get it to go back. I would suggest using a wood block to do that so you don't beat the finish off of it, if you care about that type of thing. Other than the snug fit, it was no problem whatsoever. Like I said, I've been out here maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours knocking this out, and that includes camera time, you know, trying to show you guys what I'm doing. So this is easily an hour to an hour and a half job if you just put your head down and do the work. If you're contemplating ordering this setup, I hope this video helps you make your mind up. You know, it's really not a big deal to install, guys. It's a beefy part. It looks like it's very well built. Most of the UMI stuff that I've already ordered is very well built. And they do make pretty much any suspension or chassis modification that you would need on a 3rd gen Camaro. So if you're building a 3rd gen Camaro, I suggest you look up UMI, check out their inventory. Lots of good stuff there, guys. Whether you're watching this video to help you make up your mind about ordering these parts or just to help you out doing an install, if it did help you out, make sure you give it a thumbs up. If you want to keep track of the Chaos Theory Camaro build or the China Vet build or any of the other builds we got going on, make sure you subscribe. Check out the playlist on all the other projects. Once again, thanks for watching. Now get out in the garage, get something done, and I'll see you next time here on Bad Luck Garage.